Thanks for joining us for the Long Island Sound podcast. Each week we explore new music and dive deeper with the artists and their stories behind the music. Please subscribe and rate and review us wherever you stream this podcast. Here's your host, Steve Yusko.
Welcome to another edition of the Long Island Sound podcast. Hi, I'm Steve Yusko, your host, and I am so excited today because I get to speak to a music aficionado. We're going to talk about a great project called Dinner in a Playlist, which has two of my favorite things, food and music. I want to welcome Al Cattabiani to the Long Island Sound podcast. Welcome, Al. Good to see you.
It's great to be here, Steve. Thank you.
I tell you, when I looked up your background, I'm like, this is the guy for me. I think we share the same wheelhouse when it comes to music.
Deep geekery, right? That's where we live.
Gotcha. So you're part of a group called Culture Sonar. Tell us a little bit about that and a little bit about your background.
Sure. So most of my alleged career has been in around film distribution, and the heart of my career, I built a company called Wellspring, which had art films, documentaries, like the high-end stuff, snob appeal stuff, like Fellini, Kurosawa, Fassbinder, things like that. Sold that a few years ago, which was lovely. And since then have been just doing things I like with people I like, the greatest blessing you can have in a career, right?
Agreed.
And I've been a musician my whole life and decided to focus mostly on the music side of my interests, and built this blog-centered community, Culture Sonar, which is a community for basically grown-up music geeks, real kind of nerdy.
Okay.
The people who like deep dives into the music they love. And we've gathered an audience around that and produced a bunch of films and TV and video projects. So, it's not big, but it's loyal and enthusiastic. So we're pretty happy about that.
Al, what I find so interesting about music, it's something that binds us all together, no matter what genre you like. So tell me a little bit.
Right. So like anything, the new technology of the past decade or two is good news and bad news, right? So it lets you, if you're into a particular thing, you can do incredible deep dives and just find really obscure stuff, YouTube, TikTok, or wherever, right? You can really go deep. But what we've sacrificed in that is sort of the cross-genre appreciation. Like you and I are roughly the same age. We grew up with top 40. And on the top 40 in the 60s, you could have, in the top 10, you could have Dean Martin, Marvin Gaye, the Beatles, right, and the Supremes, right? Pretty wide swath of music. So you had a common culture because lots of people were listening to the same stuff, and you were exposed to lots of different genres. So what we've gained in going deep, we've lost in going wide. But that's just ever thus, right? Things change and you roll with them. But our folks have a little bit of that old cross-genre appreciation, which is nice.
Yeah, you know what I found? And when you get to a certain age, you can fall into the trap of, hey, just listening to the same old, and get stuck in Laurel Canyon, great place.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, but, that's kind of boring to me.
Yeah.
So that's why I love music discovery and seeing how music affects the culture and vice versa. Yeah. And what's really interesting about the project of Dinner in a Playlist is now you're combining two things, how food is affected by culture and vice versa, and music. So tell me a little bit about that project.
Right. So it's not out yet. We're still shopping it in pilot form, but the basic idea comes from a friend of mine who runs Maryland Public Television.
Okay.
And he said he was inviting people to submit original program ideas. And he said our top 4 programming buckets are music, food, history, and travel.
Okay.
So we tried to come up with something that checked all 4 boxes, right? So the idea behind Dinner in a Playlist is you match a musician and a chef from an interesting town, an underappreciated town. And the musician and the chef together, they concoct a dinner party. the chef comes up with a menu that reflects that town's flavor, as it were.
Okay.
And the musician comes up with a playlist to accompany that dinner. And as part of the production process, we do a little bit of the, a background on the town's history and why it's interesting. And of course, we're traveling to the place.
Sure.
Right? So we did a pilot in Tulsa, which is an underappreciated music town. If we were going to do music towns, it's easy and well covered to do, like New Orleans, Memphis, Nashville, New York, Chicago, right?
Yeah, all the hubs.
Right. Those are well covered. But Tulsa's huge. We have at the Cain's Ballroom, for example, that's where Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, a hugely influential swing band,
Sure.
Texas swing band. That's where they did their residency, essentially. Then you have like Leon Russell, you have the Gap Band, which was like really an important band in funk history. You have all this great music history, kind of underappreciated. So Tulsa was a great place for us to be, and the folks in Tulsa couldn't have been more welcoming to us. And we were really stoked about the musician host, J.D. McPherson, who's a roots rocker, Americana kind of guy, incredible guitar player and singer. He's on the road now with Alison Krauss and Robert Plant as their lead guitar player. Both Allison and Robert Plant, they know a little bit about guitar players. So,
Right.
JD's great in that band. And the chef is an indigenous woman, Nico Albert Williams. And she's very scholarly and a musician herself and brings so much knowledge about the indigenous cultures and how to adapt those foods to modern life. The two of them were great together, and we're very happy about the pilot. And now we're doing the business stuff, like raising the money for it, looking for sponsors, that sort of stuff. So with luck, maybe 2025 we get on the air. And in the meantime, we have another series that's actually out there that's going quite well called Deconstructing the Beatles, which we have a very charismatic educator, a guy named Scott Fryman, who takes one Beatle album at a time and gets under the hood and analyzes how these tracks came to be, with demo tracks, individual track assignments, early takes, et cetera, et cetera. So if you're a Beatles fan or a music fan, you can really get into the creative process. And that's what really got Culture Sonar going as an almost business.
Right.
People came to see Scott live, buy the streaming or DVD versions of the film, or see him in an art house. And last year he even co-hosted a trip to Liverpool and London.
Oh, nice.
Which was pretty great. But I got you off the track.
No.
Anyway.
What I find, if I imagine myself as an audience member, there's a couple things that I like about this idea of dinner in a playlist. One is get off the beaten track.
Yeah.
I mean, as I travel, I always like to get off the beaten track, So now you're highlighting these, not so much recognize or deep dive into these cities.
Yeah.
And then you're tying the cuisine to it, and it gives me an opportunity to learn about it and how the music is affected by the town, the history that's there, and how that influenced the music aspect of it. So as I get to where I am now, I always look to discover new things. I want an experience. I think a lot of people want that experience.
Yep.
In fact, when I talk to my wife and I say, hey, what you want to do? The first thing she says, where are they playing live music?
Yeah.
Second thing she says is, what kind of beer do they serve there? Because she's got certain select brands she uses. And then tying that together with a good food cuisine experience, that makes a great night.
Right, and that's kind of the whole package, right? You have, and typically if you go to a restaurant you like, or you go to a music venue you like, you're really getting the energy of a place, like you're soaking up its vibe, and that's what we were after, And by the way, while we were in Tulsa, we learned that Tulsa was where Route 66 was conceived.
Oh, interesting.
A guy named Cyrus Avery, I think that's who it is, came up with the idea of a national highway. It wasn't really national, Chicago to California, but he came up with that idea, and it's Route 66's 100th anniversary in 2026.
Oh, great.
So we're aiming to do a show on that too, where we get two musicians, put them in a cool car, send them on a road trip, and have them jam their way across the country.
Hey, well, if you need a driver,
No, good. We have a few volunteers, yeah. But that's an interesting concept too. Like you said, you go to a place, you find the food, you hear the music. In the same way that maybe we've lost a little cross-genre appreciation because of technology, we've also lost the regional flavor of the country. And it's like, when we were young, different regions really had like their own beers, their own sodas even, right?
Sure.
Certainly different kinds of food. And that's been a bit homogenized because of, national distribution and technology.
I think it's going to have for me, it has great interest. And everyone that I talk to, most people have an interest in music or some side of music.
Yep.
And now you're bringing the flavor of food into it. Who doesn't like food or to eat food?
Right.
And you can provide that experience. You kind of become the concierge of music and cuisine in this show.
That's the goal. Thank you. Well said. You should be on the marketing team. Thank you. That's totally what we're trying to do. And then the other part of it is you mentioned discovery, which is so hard now, even with the smart algorithms.
True.
Right?
Yeah.
It's hard to really discover new music. So for example, on Spotify, I let the AI DJ discover things for me. And I use this feature called Daylist, which based on the time of day, it puts together a playlist for you, which I wish they would be just a little bit more adventuresome because it keeps serving me the stuff I kind of know.
Right.
Right. And even AI, which is like, 1,000 times smarter than I am, right? Even AI is having a hard time coming up with really rich discovery. So we want to do our part in our powered by human intelligence way,
right,
to encourage discovery. And that, for folks like us, we can get really, like you said, you can get trapped in Laurel Canyon in the 70s, right? So how do you get out of your own bubble?
Yeah, agreed. When you talk about AI, and I love AI, how well does AI know me? And let's flip the coin on that. Let's talk about the friends who know, where you've had a shared experience going to live music. And I'm thinking of my friend Sally who would say, if you like her, you're going to like him.
Yeah.
And why don't you come to this show or that show? And it kind of takes that experience that you've had together at that moment, and now you're growing it out, and you're on the road together for discovery. And that's what it sounds like.
That's right. I think that still the best recommendation you can get on anything is from a trusted friend.
Agreed.
Right? You have some mileage with your friend. You've determined where you intersect and where you don't, and that's the most rich recommendation you can get. We're trying to be, in our own small way, kind of fill that role, because if you're in our community, you're a fellow traveler. We kind of know what you're like,
right?
And we know what you like, so we think we might know what you would like, right? So that's what we're trying to get to.
Very nice. Hey, Al, why don't we take a quick break? And we've got so much more to explore. Hey, when we come back, we're going to be with Al Cattabiani from Culture Sonar, and there's so much more to discover. Stick with us.
Are you on the hunt for the marketing goldmine where every dollar digs up diamonds? Video is the answer. Engage your audience. Build brand awareness. Enhance your web presence. Stand out at trade shows. Elevate your presentations. Create shareable content. Boost your email marketing campaigns. Integrate videos with QR codes. Close deals faster.
Video is not just a multiplayer, it's a multiplier.
Unlock the full potential of your marketing strategy today with LGC Studios. Experience matters.
Hey, Al, I'm going to give you a little plug here. For those who are interested in sponsoring Dinner and a Playlist or looking into deconstructing the Beatles, you'll find the information in the description, and you can contact us and kind of go on the road to discovery with us. Al, earlier we spoke about being in the same wheelhouse. And when we had our phone conversation and I looked at your website, Culture Sonar, I was like, oh, this guy's pretty cool. And then I started getting a little deeper into it. Tell me about Culture Sonar, how you've curated the different people that contribute to it, and where you see it going.
Right. So it's kind of a long story, but in brief, about 8 or so years ago, a friend of mine said to me, we're getting older, but not lamer. And that's not a lovely phrase, but the idea is just because we're getting older doesn't mean we can't be curious about new things that are happening in the culture, new books to read, new places to go, new things to eat, new music to listen to. So I started Culture Sonar essentially as kind of a hip alternative to AARP.
Okay.
Like nobody's happy when they get their AARP card in the mail, right? AARP does a lot of good things.
It's a depressing day. Yeah, I know.
It does a lot of good things, no disrespect, but it's it has a connotation of, well, your best days are behind you, right? So we wanted to create kind of a hip alternative to AARP, and we did that, books, travel recommendations, food recommendations, stuff like that. And the people showed up for music, not the rest of the stuff. So under the headline of Fish Where They're Biting, we really pivoted to a music focus. And most folks also showed up for the music they grew up with. So what we've been trying to do is to do really geek level dives into that music, which tends to be 60s, 70s, 80s. Like that's sort of the sweet spot. Most of our community is, let's call it 40, according to Google Analytics, right? 45 to 64 is the hump in the middle of the bell curve.
Okay.
And we have people older than that, and we have a good amount of people younger than that, but the hump is 45 to 64. So that music those folks grew up with, we'll analyze how did the guitars work on these records? How did the lyrics come to be? Who produced them, and what innovative techniques did they use? What kind of social impact did it have? What happened to the artists that made it? So it's you can be a totally casual fan and you'll learn some stuff maybe you didn't know, or you can be like the rest of us, a total nerd and just totally geek out on this stuff. So that's kind of where we live. And then from the blog audience, we built the other social channels. So we're pretty active on TikTok and YouTube and Insta, and have since made these 11 feature-length Deconstructing the Beatles films. So they've played in art house cinemas across the country, where I spent a lot of my career in that world, and have since gone on to streaming and even DVD, because we have collectors, they still want physical media. And we did a test on public television with Scott Fryman, and he did great, and he especially did well, like in the pledge breaks, which is important for public television. So we're going national next year.
Oh, congratulations.
With a TV version of Deconstructing the Beatles, and we're going to have to live with Scott becoming a star and the no brown M&Ms in the dressing room and all that, but it's a risk we're willing to take.
I watched one of the episodes, and Scott was really great, and it reminded me of pulling back the curtain on the music industry. Now, I'm an amateur musician, not anywhere near the people that I know. So what that's given me, it's really an appreciation of how they've woodshedded their craft and the hours and time that they put into it and the artistry of it. And I got to talk about my friend Mike Nugent, who's an older gentleman, great guy. And every time I go to his studio, he's quick, he's in front of his board. He's quick to tell me about what he's producing. And, hey, this is what we did with this or that, or how we influenced with different musicians. And it's kind of like watching a magician put their stuff together.
Right.
And it's so much fun. So you're right that you could be a geek or not so much a geek and really appreciate what you're doing at Culture Sonar.
Right. Wasn't his band the the bar band in like Roadhouse or something?
His band was called Cadillac Moon, and he was in the movie The Devil's Advocate.
Ah, right.
Now,
right.
I'll tell you a quick story about that.
Keanu Reeves?
Keanu Reeves
Yeah.
was in that. They were the bar band in Bayside where they filmed it, okay? And at that time, the producer was trying to get Devil at the Crossroads to fit in.
Yeah.
They wouldn't give up
Yeah.
that. So they turned to the band and say, hey, do you have a song for us? Which the song was Show Me Your Tattoo. And they're playing it for, a minute and a half in the movie. And Mike, who's like many musicians and artists, very humble. And I was talking to him about his press kit. And he's like, oh, yeah, I get paid for my song was in the movie. Oh, that's really good. And sure enough, I look on YouTube and I'm like, Mike, you're in the freaking movie.
Yeah.
He goes, oh, yeah, I'm in the movie.
Good for him. Yeah, good for him.
So we mentioned AI and how it affects choices of music, how it's directed, how it produces many things.
Yeah.
I got to make a confession. I use AI. It's a great generator for creativity, and it's strange. It's almost like talking to a camera. You're talking to this AI, and it gets to know you to a certain degree. And for a creative, it really gets the juices flowing.
Yeah.
What's your opinion about AI?
Yeah, it's like any tool, right? It depends on how you use it.
Sure.
And it's early days, so we're really just scratching the surface. But we use it all the time. I use it to generate story ideas and maybe even first drafts of when I don't contribute too many articles to Culture Sonar. I leave that to the professionals. But every now and then I'll have an idea of something I'd like to do, and I'll let AI take a first pass and then rewrite it in my voice or even edit it for brevity. So I use it for that. In video production, we've used it to create AI versions of the talent's voices, so we don't have to go back to the talent.
Interesting.
We'll use the real talent when we're down to a final cut, but for as in the interim for the editing process,
get the flow and everything.
It's 90% there. It doesn't quite have the emotion or subtlety, but it's certainly good for a rough cut. Perfectly good. We used it to create some illustrations. And there's a lot of interesting aspects to it. Music creation is a very, very interesting one,
Right.
because AI is making unbelievably realistic music. And I have mixed emotions about that. I'm a musician too, and it's going to put some musicians out of work. Like, for example, if with my producer hat on, if I need 12 bars that sound like B.B. King, right? I can ask AI to do that and not pay for it.
Right.
Little hard to resist that,
Right.
Rather than getting studio guys in or paying or licensing the music. That's a little hard to resist. But, that's a slippery slope. It's literally putting musicians out of work. Kind of hard to cope with that. So we definitely have to wrestle with that. And then there's the AI element of discovery, because it just learns what you teach it.
True.
Right? And if you keep feeding it the same stuff, it's going to give you the same stuff back. I haven't, as a listener, yet been surprised and delighted by an AI recommendation. It might do some deep cuts that I'd forgotten about, or adjacent musicians that are cool. I'm glad to discover them. But there's nothing yet completely surprising.
You know what is the word tool really kind of jumped out at me. And I can tell you only my experience in doing the podcast and editing. I use Riverside for many of my podcasts. And in just the past, I'm not kidding, 6 months, all of a sudden all these AI tools started coming in. And it literally cut my time down by 2/3 in putting a show together, from transcripts to chapter marks to you name it. It's been a good tool for me. So it's freed me up to do other fun things.
Yeah, that's the ideal outcome. If if the tool is supposed to relieve you of some of the heavy lifting so that you can use your talents more fully without having to do the drudgery, right? That's a way to look at it, which I think is great.
Right.
lots of interesting things that we're just going to have to see how they play out. Like, for example, a couple of the major labels are suing a couple of the AI music generating engines because they're saying, hey, look, AI, you learned off of our copyrighted catalogs,
Right.
and we're not getting anything out of this. It's an interesting argument, above my pay grade, how that's going to play out, but it's an interesting argument, and we're so early in this.
Right. I agree.
We don't have, or at least I don't have, like even the remotest idea how it's going to play out. But like 2 years ago, hardly any of us were using these tools, and now 2 years later, even people like us, right,
Right.
who are not digital natives, are using it all the time. So, typically, when a tool gets invented, it gets used.
Right.
And we're in early days, right?
So it's interesting thing about AI. I was asking my daughter about it. She's a real pun person, right? And she said, AI hasn't figured out puns yet.
Right.
And the other thing I would say, this is just total opinion, is improvisation.
Yeah.
Okay. Where I can go to a live show and watch a band and hear the same song that I've heard several times, and then I see the improvisation of the guitarist taking me into another area. In fact, I had a guy say, all right, I went somewhere else with that. And the band's all enjoying with great smiles. That improvisation, giving the audience something new every time. And that's what's exciting.
I think that's right. That's absolutely right. Like if you go see jazz or even like a jam band, like when they're flowing, they're taking you to places that they didn't expect and they're reacting in real time. AI hasn't really gotten that yet. And then the other thing is, take a band like the Beatles, right? If you go one album at a time, every succeeding album was different than the one that came before it. The difference between Revolver, say, and Meet the Beatles, pretty substantial, right? And AI at that time, if it were doing it, said, give me something that sounds like the Beatles, it would sound like their older stuff. It can't yet anticipate, I think, like a major creative leap, like where Tomorrow Never Knows versus She Loves You, or like night and day, right? I don't see yet how AI takes you on that journey. I suspect it will, but I for one haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, I can also equate it to ice cream flavors. There was a favorite a scene with Johnny Cash, and I would think the pressure of money and production say, hey, just give me the same game. Give me another version of vanilla.
Yeah.
I don't like vanilla anymore. I'm tired of vanilla. I want to go into something else. And that's where being in the company of creatives is fantastic, because they will take these leaps, whether they're large leaps that may fail, but they're taking those leaps, and that brings art to another level. Yeah,
I think that's right, and appreciating that is a challenge for our people like us, because a lot of us tend to stay in Laurel Canyon in the 70s. Give me more Joni, give me more CSNY, right? And their sound-alikes. So forcing ourselves to make that leap to the next thing is, I think, good for us.
Right.
But as we roll down the road and we have more and more favorites, we tend to default to those, and we're trying to fight against that.
Thanks. Hey, Al, I want to thank you for taking this road of discovery with me. I'm really excited about Dinner and a Playlist. I'm definitely going to visit the Deconstructing the Beatles, and I ask my audience to really look into it. You're going to have a great time. You're going to learn a lot, and you're going to have some fun along the way.
Great. No, it's been great talking to you. Thanks for your time, and this was fun. Thank you.
All right. Until next time, as I say, keep your spirits high, be generous with your joy, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment, and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace.